You think you're standing tall right now, but you're not. Not in the way your ancestors once did. The moment they rose up on two legs, the entire world changed. And whether you realize it or not, that ancient decision still echoes in your body, your mind, your every instinct. Because standing upright wasn't just about balance or survival. It was the first declaration of independence. The moment we left the ground, we weren't just walking, we were rewriting destiny. But here's the mystery. It almost didn't happen. Evolution didn't guarantee us this path. Millions of years ago, most creatures stayed low, close to the earth, where safety was. So why did some of our ancestors gamble everything, rise up, and risk becoming easier prey? The answer isn't what you think, and it's far stranger, far more human than just survival. Imagine it. East Africa, 3.5 million years ago. The air is heavy with heat, the smell of wet soil after rain. A small group of Australopithecines moves cautiously through tall grass. They're not the fastest, not the strongest, not the most dangerous. To the predators around them, they're lunch. But something is different about this group. Look closer. One of them rocks forward, sways, and steadies, not on 4 limbs, but on 2. For the first time, a pair of small, calloused feet press flat into the dirt, leaving a trail not of paws or knuckles, but footprints, unmistakably human. We know this happened. The Laetoli footprints in Tanzania, preserved in volcanic ash 3.6 million years ago, show our ancestors walking side by side, upright, together, a family snapshot burned into stone. Standing meant vision. From the grasslands, lifting your head gave you new sight lines. The shimmer of water on the horizon, the shadow of a lion waiting in the brush, the safety of a tree in the distance. A survival advantage, yes, but also a symbolic one. For the first time, our ancestors weren't trapped by what was immediately in front of them. They could see further. They could imagine further. And hands, once pressed to the earth, were suddenly free. Free to carry food back to camp. Free to cradle a child longer. Free to pick up a rock. And eventually, to shape it. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Standing upright wasn't just a triumph. It was a curse, too. Our spines bent under pressure. Our pelvises narrowed. Childbirth became more dangerous, and running on 2 legs made us slower at first, easier to catch. Standing up made life harder, but it also made us human. Think about this. Most species evolved to optimize for safety. Birds fly to escape predators. Cheetahs run faster. Tortoises armor themselves. But humans, we went the opposite direction. We stood taller, more visible, more exposed. That decision should have doomed us. And yet, it gave us something no other animal had: perspective. Standing wasn't just a physical shift, it was the beginning of imagination. When you rise above, you don't just see the world as it is, you start to see it as it could be. Standing up wasn't a victory lap, it was a gamble. Imagine being one of those first upright walkers, a lone figure on the savanna. You're taller, yes. You can see further, yes. But you're also slower than the leopards, weaker than the hyenas, and more fragile than the elephants. Every step on 2 legs was a risk. A hungry lion crouches low. A sudden sprint, and your life could end before you ever passed on your genes. And yet, somehow, this awkward, stumbling posture persisted. Why? Because what we lost in raw power, we gained in something infinitely more dangerous: cooperation. Free hands didn't just carry food, they carried possibilities. A loose stone became a hammer, a sharp edge became a knife. And here's the twist most people forget. The first tools weren't just about hunting, they were about sharing. Archaeologists studying early stone flakes from sites like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania found bones with cut marks dating back 2.6 million years, not just on large animals, but on smaller scavenged remains, the kind of food you could bring back to camp. Suddenly, one person's effort could feed many. The gamble of standing upright forced our ancestors into a new survival strategy. Alone, we were prey, but together, we became predators. Picture this: a group of early humans fanning out across the savanna, not sprinting like cheetahs, not ambushing like leopards, but jogging, slow, steady, relentless. This is the secret of persistence hunting. A gazelle can outrun a human in a burst, but it can't sweat like we can. It can't regulate heat as efficiently. So mile after mile, our ancestors ran, tracking footprints in the dirt, watching the animals' panic rise. Hours later, exhausted, the prey collapsed, not from speed, but from endurance. Standing upright wasn't just about walking. It was the birth of the long game. We stopped reacting to the world and started pursuing it. But cooperation didn't stop at the hunt. Around campfires, something even stranger happened. By the flickering light, free hands began to gesture, to point, to tell stories. Anthropologists argue that standing up didn't just change our bones, it rewired our minds for language. Because think about it, once your hands are no longer tied to the ground, they can signal. A raised palm, a pointing finger, a wave. Over time, gestures turned to sounds, and sounds to meaning. Standing upright gave us more than tools. It gave us culture. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Progress always carries pain. Standing upright cursed us with bad backs, twisted ankles, childbirth that often ended in death. Every evolutionary step forward was bought with suffering. Yet our ancestors didn't turn back. They didn't crawl down to safety. They endured. Because standing wasn't just about movement anymore. It was about identity. We had chosen the harder path, and in that hardship, something unshakable began to grow: resilience. So when our ancestors gambled on standing, they weren't just surviving predators. They were inventing something brand new, a mind that could imagine, cooperate, and endure. But here's the real question for us today. We're still standing, but are we upright? Not just in posture, but in spirit. Because what our ancestors began millions of years ago isn't finished. Think about your own body right now. How often do you slump into a chair, shoulders rounded, head down, scrolling on a glowing screen? You've stood upright, yes, but inside, something else may have slouched. Our ancestors stood up in body, but more importantly, they stood up in spirit. They chose risk over safety, collaboration over isolation, endurance over comfort. They stood not just against predators, but against the impossible odds of existence itself. And that's where the parallel lives inside you. Because every time you stand up for yourself, for someone you love, for something you believe in, you're echoing a decision that began millions of years ago. History is full of moments where standing wasn't just physical, it was defiance. When a lone man in 1989 stood before tanks in Tiananmen Square, it was posture as resistance. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, it was standing even while sitting down. When enslaved people across centuries risked death for freedom, they stood in ways more powerful than any weapon. The act of standing upright became a metaphor written into human culture. To stand for justice, to stand for truth, to take a stand. All of it traces back to that first gamble on the savanna. But here's the uncomfortable twist. In the modern world, we're losing it. We've traded endurance for convenience, resilience for comfort. Most of us don't run after gazelles. We chase dopamine hits, likes, notifications, calories delivered to our doors. We stand less and slump more, not just physically, but morally, spiritually. We know the posture of survival, but not always the posture of meaning. So the question becomes, are we really upright anymore? Or have we quietly folded back down? There's a reason standing tall feels good, a reason that straightening your spine in a moment of doubt changes how you think. Neuroscience today shows posture influences mood, confidence, even decision-making. It's as if our bodies still carry the echo of that ancient decision. Stand and endure. Stand and see further. Stand and rise. This is why the metaphor matters. You don't need to run persistence hunts to honor your ancestors. You need to find the places where you've been crawling and stand again. What does that look like? Maybe it's finally having the hard conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's walking into a room where you feel out of place and refusing to shrink. Maybe it's chasing a dream others laugh at because you know it matters. Standing up today is less about bones and more about courage, but the instinct is the same. You were wired for it. You inherited it. It is in your blood. So here's where I'll leave you. Our ancestors risked everything to rise, to see, to endure. They stood up and gave us a world. But now the story isn't theirs anymore. It's yours. So, what are you going to stand for? If this story made you pause, made you feel that ancient echo inside your chest, then don't let it fade. Because the posture of standing is a practice. And I want to show you how our ancestors' choices about hunger, fear, fire, and tribe still whisper to us today. So if you're ready to uncover more of those forgotten instincts, subscribe, hit the bell, and join me for the next chapter. Because this wasn't just the day they stood up, it's the day you can too.